They say when you wear Black Power Media gear, you can accomplish anything. You play any and every position. From coaching, to kicking, to receiving, to running and juking. And, oh my goodness, I see that again in slow motion. Get off me. And you're going to have a lot of haters coming at you, but what you got to do is you got to shake them off and get to your goal and accomplish it. And when that's done, it's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about going hard, extra, for that extra point. And when it's done beautifully, you talking about touchdown. Oh, and the crowd goes wild and they're celebrating with you and everything. Man, let's see that again. Nice.
Black Power Media, baby. That's how we do it.
Now go to blackpowermedia.org and get you some of that gear. Empower yourself today. Yeah.
All right. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of Earn Your Liberation, episode 4, right here on Black Power Media. I'm Jared Ball, joined by my comrades, colleagues, co-hosts, Diallo, brother Diallo, Geechee, y'all. What's up, fellas?
What's up, man?
Good morning.
I think I just saw Kamal with that EYL I need a bear sign. I'm in Atlanta, so I'm pretty sure that was him. I saw him on 285.
You saw him out on the corner?
Yeah, make sure y'all donate to this man off the street. Yeah, man, we gotta get that.
Yeah, get this man off the street, man. Yeah, help this man get his life together. You know. Greetings, everybody coming in, the remixers, everybody who will see this later. Peace to you as well. At 9 o'clock, we're going to expect Diedrich Muhammad to come through and talk with us about some new research about my crib, my hometown right here in Columbia, Maryland, these tree-lined streets. I don't know if y'all ready for that, though. I don't know. It's good we have a full hour before he gets here so you all can acclimate yourselves to what's coming with these, but I actually think as I've always argued, I think Columbia is a microcosm of what happens in the country and in the world. And I think this report shows some of that. So we'll talk with him about that in the next hour. But in the meantime, between time, what's up? What's going on?
Y'all got 3 famous people from Columbia?
Do we have 3? Magruder, does he count? Yeah, Magruder, and he was a classmate of Diedrich in according to the report.
I see that. You, Diedrich and
oh, me? No. Ed Norton.
Ed Norton.
He's supposed to be.
He's the best talk.
He's the best talk.
he's not no freedom scholar.
But he's the best.
What the fuck? This dude.
You know what I'm saying? He's not a freedom scholar. Tell him, Geechee, tell him.
He don't got no office up in Morgan.
You know what I mean? My empty office. Did you see that? Oh, whoops, my bad. Did you see that? Or go watch that episode though. Go watch that PBS joint is a mess. So go watch my video on that. But yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, breaks my heart. And Chuck D's coming out to defend Kanye West.
No.
Yeah, he's out doing a promo tour for the documentary, and he said he sees Kanye West as Salvador Dali.
I don't get that. I don't know enough about
Salvador Dali had some racist and Nazi-esque sympathies, but he was a tortured artist, the whole tortured genius.
Suffering.
Oh wow.
That was just so multi-dimensional that us normies just really can't comprehend them, and therefore we're not really in a position to judge such artistic and tortured genius.
Wow.
You remember? Because last time I was engaging with Chuck D, he had posted a memorial to Colin Powell on his Instagram page.
No, he didn't.
The hell he didn't, yo.
Diallo be out here lying on Friday mornings, man.
I wish for God I was lying.
I'm not surprised, man. I told y'all last year I was in Birmingham, and matter of fact, I should Kehinde, I should curse him out for that. I was at a Kwanzaa event, and they poured libations to Colin Powell, and I walked out. I was like, I'm done.
Oh, my last event, they poured libations to Jesus Christ.
What? Well, he was, an African revolutionary.
He was way better than Colin Powell. Jesus Christ. He was way
he
better.
though? Was he though? Whose legacy? I mean, we got the My Lai massacre and other in Vietnam atrocities, and maybe the Gulf War. I mean, there's a lot of conflict attributed to Colin Powell. But who got a bigger war crimes track record than Jesus Christ?
When he came on when he showed up on my aircraft carrier and had his white lieutenant carrying his briefcase, it caused quite a little scene for us once upon a time back in the day. Don't front. It was but I was actually hating from that moment even then. I was, because we were literally on the hangar deck. And if anybody's been on a hangar deck, that it's like that gravel to be a track for the planes. So it's like a real hard, gravelly, painful surface. We had to be, I don't know, we were like I don't know, we were crawling around or had to be like doing some cleaning, doing some ridiculous work. And we saw this, and one of the brothers I was with was like, look at that white man carrying his briefcase. And I was like, yeah, but we still right here. But we're still right here. Like, I'm still doing this. Yeah,
vicarism. You got to step up your vicarism skills.
Like, this isn't helping me. But anyway, but that's that. Yeah, your word was right though. Painful is a good word for it. Painful is a good word for it. So,
man, you was cleaning missiles and bomb, bro.
Oh man, I was a glorified janitor. Every once in a while, they would let us shoot a 50 cal machine gun and make us feel good to get our masculinity up. But for the most part, I did so much paint stripping and then repainting and then floor waxing and dishwashing. I mean, like every time I see a dish in the sink to this day, I got PTSD. I was like, not another dish. So it's like that was it. So yeah, we were cleaning something. They always had us do that. That was what it was. We don't have nothing to do. Go clean something. Strip. They would literally say they go strip the paint off of that and then repaint it. Anyway, yeah, man, it was
war
a mess,
machine.
Man. Yeah, it was a war machine. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, speaking of that, though, we have a new handbook that has been published to help us deal with the war machine. And I just started reading it, and we watched. I don't know if Diallo did this. I think Geechee, maybe me and you, the only ones that.
Yeah, man. Diallo don't do no homework, man.
Diallo don't do it. Diallo.
I don't be doing shit at work.
You don't do no homework, no research, no read shit. Just show up and start shooting. Bow, bow, start busting, show up, busting.
I already know everything is terrible. What new?
No, we watched the
same old
Revolt
shit. Y'all
TV.
keep recycling the same shit. I just got the same critique for new shit that I got for old shit.
This, and maybe this, your point there maybe is the most applicable to this.
And I ain't even read it.
The Revolt TV interview with Patrice Cullors, and then her new abolitionist handbook. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know what to say.
Basically, if you read in Kwame Nkrumah shit, you might as well put that in the trash, and elevate this, because
the handbook for revolutionary warfare has now been replaced.
I read that.
Yeah,
that's the way.
But we don't need that anymore. That's the point. Because we do have the I'll just share it here.
We're about to be financial literate and liberated.
12 Steps to Changing Yourself in the World, an Abolitionist Handbook by Patrice Cullors. Now, I haven't read it very closely. I only started it this morning, but to her credit,
the 12 steps.
Go to the what?
Go to the first page where it lists the 12 steps.
Well, my point though is this is what I did notice. It says fight the state. There were two things I noticed actually. First of all, hold on, because where was it that she defines abolition? Oh man, where was it that she defined?
It was
abolition?
at the beginning too. Now she does talk about fighting the state, but she also talk about non-reform reform.
So I haven't, I didn't get into the chapter yet, but I saw that she was targeting the state, and I felt like that was a good start, so I don't know, where she goes with that. And I can't find it right now, but I did like how she defined abolition.
Well, she got it from.
I noticed that the first I did notice that the first thing that she says that we should go do is check out this interview, this NPR podcast, Code Switch, which is a I think it's all Black hosted podcast, but and I was actually on it. Well, no, that's not true. The host of Code Switch did a 45 or so minute interview with me about buying power, and then reduced it to about 30 seconds that got put on NPR in the morning, and the interview never aired on, like, he never used it on Code Switch. So, I admit I have a little feeling about that. But it is NPR, so it was to be expected. And I don't even necessarily blame the hosts themselves. It is NPR. What could be expected? But anyway, my point is she defines abolition in here, and I actually thought the definition was I mean, it sounded good the way she defined it.
I felt like she was quoting Angie Davis from Our Prisons.
Is that what she was doing?
I'm pretty sure. So it ain't her.
I can't find it yet. But here we go. Abolition centers on getting rid of prisons, jails, police courts, and surveillance, period. How it affects us is so much more than that. So again, I have not read any more than that, but I thought, okay, she's targeting the state and saying get rid of prisons, jails, police courts, and surveillance. I feel like she's
targeting it in the non-profit industrial complex way, meaning capture words and use the words back and regurgitate it, but don't mean one lick of it. So I'm not sure that.
Man, come on, man.
Listen, I'm just saying, I skimmed through the book and I ain't see it.
Man, y'all got mad time on y'all hands.
That's cynical.
I skimmed through the book. I mean, listen, when the lady said the FBI call her personally and tell her her life is in danger, you have to read the book.
So the interview was so let me say, so I, years ago, before BLM, before Black Lives Matter popped off, and I want to say this would have been before Mike Brown was this would have been before Mike Brown was killed. Man, my memory's a mess. I'd have to double check. But when Patrice was still in LA living in an artist co-op, she was cool with Rosa Clemente, and I was in LA and me and Rosa were hanging out, and I met Patrice. And no, I think this is after, because we got a We Are Bulletproof Black Lives Matter t-shirt. So it must have been at the very beginning, or either that, or I was just not paying attention because I barely knew I didn't really know her. I didn't really know what was going on. We just met, and I went to see. She was putting on Patrice was putting on a one woman performance at a local, at some maybe university somewhere in LA. I don't know exactly where I was. Somewhere in LA. We went to see the performance, and I admit a bias. I have an issue. I do have an issue with some of the. I have an issue with some of the. I just am not enough of an artist. I don't have enough of an appreciation, I think, and. Well, I guess what I'm saying is when I was watching the Revolt interview, I was reminded of her performance capabilities, of her performance, of her theatrical capability. Oh, wow. And it felt performative. It felt, and I feel like maybe that's the way I felt about the whole thing. And maybe that's just because of my bias. And of course, we have political differences or whatever. But when I was watching it, I was just like,
beater.
I don't know. That's just all I kept thinking, and that's all I kept thinking. So the whole thing, she got to explain herself. Again, she did the same thing in this interview was the one I remember she did with Mark Lamont Hill a little while ago, where all of the criticism that she's asked to respond to is criticism from the Fox News right wing. And it's as if there is not this left critique that she has been avoiding since I tried to get her and her sister comrades, the founding triad, to engage. At the time, Glenn Ford, Bruce Dixon, members of the other elements of the Black left. And I was saying to them in this one email exchange, you all don't want to address yourselves to this side of things. This is not some conservative critique that people have. It's the Black left that would like to engage you. And there seemed to not be an interest in that. And yet in every other space they show up and get to play that Candace Owens is the enemy, Tucker Carlson is the enemy, the Klan is the whatever, the Trumpers are the enemy. So as if there isn't this legitimate critique from elements of even those who were doing the work within the Black Lives Matter ecosystem. Like all of those criticisms. So like they don't ask her about the BLM 10 or any of those other issues that were coming up from within the movement. They certainly weren't asking her to respond to the criticisms of people in these kinds of left spaces. So it was just and then she, her cousin is killed. Her she's 20 years.
She don't know her well.
I didn't want to say, I don't know that, but I was just like, oh, I don't know, man. It just felt
that was a little rough. That was a little rough. Do you remember so-and-so? I don't remember him, but can you tell me about him so I can talk to the news about it? Like that was some shitty ass memories of her cousin. But she really pissed me off when she compared herself to Fred Hampton and said Candace Owens is her William O'Neill. Like she really pissed me. That's actually what
I don't even did that come. That must have been at the very, very end. I admit I didn't. I missed like the last. I think I did miss that part. I saw the initial part about Candace. I'm glad I missed. She said that, man. She said Candace Owens is her William O'Neill.
In so many words, that's what she said.
I did hear like that's theater. Now that, like you said, performance.
She did say earlier, she did lay the groundwork for that earlier in the interview where she says something like she alludes to Judas and the Black Messiah. I did hear that part.
That was it. That was the part. That
was okay. Because but I didn't hear I didn't hear the overt. I mean, she makes the point. I heard her make that point where she was saying, she said you gotta, we saw the movie. So we know how this works, and yeah. Okay, I did see that part, but I was like,
that was in response to the sister asking her when Candace ran up on her house. That was in response to that.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Well,
so because the Grinch is here, Diallo in the chat, y'all can answer this too. But so obviously there's a legit fight against police terrorism. Right. And these people pretty much capture the attention. Like, what does movements like that do to our fight, our struggle towards police terrorism? What'd you say?
I mean, I hate to say the word controlled opposition, but that's kind of it's controlled opposition. I mean, they are firmly integrated into the status quo of the Democratic Party and the liberal establishment. And Black people are justifiably outraged. And so they take that justified outrage and direct it towards activism and advocating for things that don't disrupt the status quo, but give Black people some hope or some illusion that there's a potential for change, and they can get the voices. So she'll go and do photo ops with Angela Davis and photo ops with prominent white liberals and prominent Democratic politicians to give us to direct our energies and to give us false hope. And maybe just maybe they'll go off every now and then, because when they erect this type of controlled opposition, every now and then that controlled opposition will go off the reservation or get disillusioned with the agreement and actually become true radicals and begin to advocate for true abolition and take true abolitionary work. But I haven't really seen that with the BLM establishment yet.
Jared, would you say the same thing?
And I sincerely just stopped paying attention to the BLM. It's just, I mean, it's just kind of, y'all can go, these folks, man. What's left?
Also on the clip, I don't know if you saw that they had Samaria Rice on there. They had the homeboy Tony from St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of played the clip, but it was almost they just dismissed the fact that, I guess, I don't even know if they played the whole clip. I don't think they played the whole clip.
Yeah, oh boy, what's his name?
Tony Russell.
Tory Russell.
Tory
Russell. And who mentioned my name in disagreement during that Talib interview that I'll never get to defend myself on because Diallo done messed that whole thing up. So
the church's money.
You know, that's a wrap. But yeah, they did that. They did that, but they did, you know, they showed those clips but there was no discussion of the actual critique. And it just allowed Patrice to just say that basically they're haters, they're complainers, or to avoid the direct, you know, point altogether. And Diallo, to your point, I mean, I agree, and I've largely, I've not been paying attention pretty much for the whole time. I haven't been paying that close attention to, you know, but I did watch, you know, a good portion of that thing, and it was very difficult, and it did make me feel like, and maybe watching it so closely to that PBS hip hop thing, it was like a day or so, like a 48 hours of just like.
Man, don't pay. Listen, anything Chuck D does or says off the stage, just block it out. Because I went to see them, Public Enemy, perform at the House of Blues, and it was just phenomenal. I mean, Professor Griff didn't miss a step. Flav was on.
Oh, Griff was there with them?
It was the whole crew.
When was this?
Blew my mind. And so, listen, including Griff, Flavor, and Chuck, if they're not on the stage, don't listen, don't watch.
All three of them? That's funny.
Them cats in their own special way.
Yeah.
They out there.
I have had the pleasure of seeing the full PE live and direct at a Howard homecoming. And it is impressive when you see Griff and the whole S1s and the whole, and everybody's up there, and that boom bap is rocking. Like we said, man, like my man Ty said, like it makes you, we thought we was about to win, man.
Yeah, shoot. And this is recent. This is just recent.
Oh, wow. Okay, right on.
So,
right on.
Like I said, man, if Chuck ain't on stage, you know, don't pay attention. I don't know a lot of these artistic, because he's like Salvador Dali. I'm gonna use the excuse and the justification he used for that the coverage he tried to give to Kanye. Chuck D is like Salvador Dali. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I barely remember the name.
Out for that. So,
listen, this Mama's Triscuits thing, stop playing with me in the chat, man.
Now we about to pull your card. Listen, we gonna pull your card when Diedrich get here. If Diedrich don't tell me y'all was popping, you can't talk about Mama's Biscuit no more.
Oh no, man. No. Wait, what?
If Diedrich don't tell me Mama's Biscuits was popping.
No, Diedrich, no. Diedrich wouldn't know anything about that. This was not, Mama's Biscuits was not a Columbia thing. Mama's Biscuits is a Western Maryland Frostburg State University thing. It's a you got to ride past Negro Mountain. And people who know about Route 68, no, I think it's still there. I think it's still called Negro Mountain to this day. It's literally called Negro Mountain, named, and it was named, I looked it up years later, and it was named after a brother whose name they didn't even record. he was used by these white folks to help navigate that Western Maryland corridor and fight the indigenous people. So they named it Negro Mountain, because he was hopping bobbing his way. He was
Tell him about the gun line,
his way.
boss. Tell him about the gun line, boss.
Tell him about the gun line, boss. He was like, you New York cities. He was like, I'll beat the black off you. He said, so he was helping them, and they rewarded him. And if I remember correctly, he got killed in the process, and the reward was not even to put his name on a joint. They just literally Negro Mountain. So for years, I would be driving out to pass Negro Mountain on my way to Frostburg, and so Diedrich wouldn't know anything about that. Plus, Diedrich, and as he said, his classmate Aaron Magruder, they were a couple years younger than me. So these are youngins. These are youngins. They wouldn't know nothing about Mama's Biscuits, So anyway, so everybody can stop hating. Wait till these lost tapes start popping up.
We just want to see one kick, one snare, something, just something.
Wait till these lost tapes start popping up. It's gonna be a lot of apologies. It's gonna be some consequences and repercussions. So anyway, what else has been going on? Diallo, I caught some of your show, and need to go back and finish some of it. You had a long Q&A session. Were there any highlights from that? And then seeing
I was
because we got your and did you share with everybody the new logo and everything?
Oh no, you called me Antifa.
Well, because I was like, look at, the logo. You know what I mean? I was
but like, yeah. Like,
you got the anarchist though? A in there.
Huh? Yeah.
You got the anarchist, Antifa, them radical terrorists. I don't know. Whatever Tucker Carlson says they are, Diallo, that's what it is. Because that's what it is.
Y'all got to stop letting these white races chase y'all away from concepts. You're like woke. Yeah, I'm woke. I'm radical. And so yeah, and I am pro anarchy. I'm not an anarchist, but I do support anarchy. So we gotta. That's kind of my thing. That I think radicalism and anarchy and wokeism, as they call it, has been sullied and misappropriated by our enemies. And these are things that we need to do. We have to be woke. We have to be anti-fascist, and we absolutely have to be radical. Because that's where, or you end up with abolitionism. Bourgeois abolitionism. So yeah, I'm all them things. And anti-fascist is an ideology. It's a conclusion. It's a position. It's not a movement or an organization. So I hope all of y'all is anti-fascist. And I notice black folks are like, oh, we're gonna give anti-fascism to white folks, as if black people weren't anti-fascist before everybody. We were anti-fascist long before the first anti-fascists in America were African people, back when Americans were naming Hitler as Man of the Year, and America's number one industrialist, Henry Ford, was on a first name basis with Adolf Hitler. It was black people calling out, you are American fascism with our anti-imperialist liberationist work. Garvey was anti-fascist.
But we don't need any of that anymore, and we don't. But
now we let musty white kids have the term.
We don't even need them. We don't need them, and we don't even need. I don't even think we need what you're describing, because my university got it covered. Okay, because we got a Mellon Foundation Award for Morgan State, $500,000 to cultivate the next generation of Black LGBTQ plus scholar activists. All right. So everybody can chill.
Tell me you met your sister.
Everybody in the chat, stand down. We got you. We got you. So now I do know Professor Simpson. Oh, I do. I know Professor Annika Simpson. First of all, we need to point out, shout out to Professor Simpson. she knew your boy back in the day as a listener. She and her then husband, listeners to WPFW, the mighty 89.3 FM, Washington, D.C. So she was already familiar with your boy when I rolled up on campus umpteen years ago. Now, anyway, but I haven't rapped with her in a minute, but I do know her. And she got this award or got this grant. She brought in some money.
Since you know her, and maybe even a chat can answer this if you can. So do you know what a Black queer feminist epistemological framework, what that is? Like what kind of?
Well, like, as you and Diallo know, given that all three of us are proud representatives of queer theory and the gay agenda, we all three know very well what it is. But you know, so I don't appreciate being quizzed like that on live YouTube.
But can I say something? Can I say something? Can I say something? On this Black queer stuff, as the representative of the gay agenda, Bugs Life, Bugs Life looking cat. Let me say this: the cisgendered, heterosexual, patriarchal side of things, we kind of dropped the ball. It was one time where Black resistance, Black power, Black militancy, Black consciousness was Black male heterosexual and cisgender, everybody. And then when it's Black History Month, I mean, walk around your community, wherever those placards are, it's all cisgendered, heterosexual, patriarchal, and started going a little off kilter. It went from Black liberation, Black liberationist analysis to revolution to status quo, you know, family values, right-wing, centrist, reactionary. And so I talk to a lot of people, these ex-zennials and not really millennials so much, but these teens, late teens and 20-year-olds. And when they hear Black power, Black resistance, they're not thinking John Henry Clark. They're not even too familiar with Fred Hampton. When they hear woke, conscious, revolutionary, Pan-Africanism, they're thinking Dr. Umar.
So
they're thinking Yatta. So they're like, damn, this is reactionary shit. And this ain't liberationist. This is some focus on the family, ultra conservative, right wing, status quo shit.
So listen, real quick then. I'm reading that the queer feminist epistemological framework is countering the cis-normative, heteronormative Black political science. Is you saying that's what Umar represents?
Huh?
Is that what Umar represents?
Umar, I mean, that would be, no, that's going too far.
Umar
markets himself as the Prince of Pan-Africanism. And if you look at the discourse amongst the radicalized, conscious, woke youth, they're looking at us, the older, you know, generation, as Umar is kind of like the yardstick. And if you look at their memes and shit, like whenever there's some cool shit going on and these hilarious Umar memes and like, oh, I'm calling Umar whenever somebody of their generation does some cool shit. So what's feeding a lot of this is even justifiable is how the guard got replaced. It's just like how, you know, it was a liberationist Black Panther, Black liberationist movement that got replaced by integrationists. Now, I'm not even pointing fingers. It's just the way things were. And I'm gonna point fingers. It's white folks' fault. It's all white man's fault. But I'm just saying, I understand where they're like, wow, you know, they want to go into queer theory and abolish the patriarchy and all these things because many of the so-called Black radicals really went hard in the paint for this family values, put the Black man back in the home, and started spewing this rhetoric instead of critiquing the system, instead of critiquing the systems and institutions of oppression and exploitation and capitalism and white hegemony and imperialism. black radicals started talking about pull your pants up, put the black man back at the head of the household, and talking all this.
But that wasn't black radicals though. That was but that's the problem that I have even with this PBS joint. They're leaving out the
black
state's intervention
You're
here.
right. I'm not right. It wasn't black radicals, but to a many black youth, that was their impression or their introduction to black radicalism on social media, on YouTube, and they're looking at Umar. And we still parading out Farrakhan, you know, with his Axel Grease hair dye. We still bringing him out as the voice to speak on current issues. We still got Sharpton.
You gotta chill on the minister.
So a lot of a lot of black youth was like, this ain't the way. So they were trying to find,
No, I just want to stop at your use of the word intelligently and stop at the word intelligence, and just to interject that point. So like, I agree with your initial point. I've run with this even myself to a certain extent, that what young people and many others are responding to is that Umar style version of the Hotep and black radicalism. But the problem is that I'm sorry,
Lord Jamar.
What'd you say? Yeah,
Lord,
I mean all
Jamar.
of that, but all of them are entering into that political vacuum that we're still suffering after the repression of the last wave of genuine radicalism. So this is still the post COINTELPRO vacuum, I think, that we're dealing with, where we're still, because we still have literally political prisoners locked up.
I literally said it's ultimately the white man's fault.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. So I want to, but the point I'm trying to get at is that when we at the point of trying to perform the analysis, I think we have to recognize that moment, recognize that these folks have been promoted into a vacuum to create the exact sort of feedback loop that you're responding to.
Yeah, but not all these people have been promoted by the system. Some of these people rose up organically from the community and are supported by the community.
But I don't think
some of these individuals, these Yada characters, and that whole run of the what was that thing, Sodnetter?
Yeah,
that Sodnetter era of YouTube. Yeah. That shit didn't come from the system. Like that. Them BLM sisters, they were on NPR, they were on MSNBC. But a lot of these characters, these reactionary characters who called themselves revolutionary, called themselves Pan-Africanists, called themselves radical, called themselves scholars, and they were none of those things.
But what I'm saying,
a lot of those individuals, let me just finish. They rose up from our community and got a lot of brothers. To this day, I'm still fighting off this reactionary, right-wing, conservative nonsense parading as Pan-Africanism or radical or revolutionary. Because we've been victims of of their followers. We got called out by that very group.
I'm saying what I'm saying though is that I don't distinguish at a certain point. I don't distinguish anymore between what the state officially actually implements and what is allowed to arise. And I don't agree it's organic. It's welcomed by the existing apparatus that welcomes and makes room for that wing of thought that has always been there, but what would have been there to respond to it or suppress it or adjust it or radicalize it is itself still being targeted directly by the state. That part I'm saying is
two things.
Leaving the room. So then hold on, Diallo, hold on. I'll let you finish. Hold on. So it even it becomes that the machine works almost automatically then. So it becomes the algorithm per se. So on YouTube, literally the algorithm just welcomes that wing of thought. It welcomes the black capitalism. It welcomes the conservatism. It welcomes that. And then the broader media environment is welcoming of that analysis as well. And because it has nothing left scientifically radically to compete with, it is allowed to flourish. So that's all I mean by that. So it's organic in the sense that there are always variations of thought, but it's not organic in the sense that there is a particular apparatus and algorithm that welcomes and promotes and invites and recirculates that form. All right, go ahead. My bad.
Wait, before we get too far, one, could you invite that sister on? I would love to hear
Who?
more. The sister, going back to the Morgan article and the funding that did the $500,000.
Sure.
What is it called? Queer everything.
Black
I think is the
queer everything.
Yeah, that's one. And then two, that same grant, isn't that the grant or the people who fund the humanities and social science?
Yeah, I mean, they fund. Mellon is also funding. It's a Mellon grant that funded my Black Studies program at Morgan. Or the Black Studies, it's not mine. The Black Studies program in which I'm working.
Yeah.
Mellon funded. My guy. Shout out to Dr. Ali Johnson and the folks at Wayne State. Got millions from Mellon for their white provost up there is trying to really build out Black studies at Wayne State and got a huge Mellon grant for them. So Mellon is that's what they do. So by the way, I'm earning my nickname this morning. The only reason I happened to notice that announcement was because I was on the Morgan website looking to see if they were ever going to announce my award, and they have not. And so please, by the way, everybody, go back and continue. I appreciate it. Go back and hit a like and retweet on my pinned tweet at I Mix What I Like there on Twitter. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. But to their point, why should they? I mean, they get, more money coming for more, welcomed people and politics by that institution. So, and shout out to Professor Simpson. Good for her. But I'll reach out. I'll send her an email right now. In fact, I'll type it out right now.
I saw her quoting some Joy James and some stuff. I want to know more about that. So.
Oh, she knows. Yeah. In fact, we had been on. I want to say it's been a while. Actually, we had been on WEAA some years ago. Is any funded, endorsed, promoted revolutionary effort corrupted? How to parse? When are we taking advantage of funding but control versus when are we used, studied, aimed? I think that's a good question. I'm not aware of look, within academia, there are a lot of people who do a lot of good work under the guise of different things. So I'm not talking about Professor Simpson here at all. So I want to be clear. But there are a lot of people who go for the grants that are available. And for those who don't know, you go to the grant website and you start looking through the list in fields in the general topic areas that you're interested in, and you see what's available. And you sometimes gotta tweak your pitch. And by the way, I'm talking to somebody who has and this is one of the huge gaps on my CV as it pertains to the academic world. I have brought in almost no money, very little money. So I'm not an expert on grant writing at all. I have never really, and my argument has always been, we got 4 classes to teach. People got grant writing departments that do this stuff for them. So don't, why I got to, but anyway, but people like Professor Simpson and many others do this work in addition to all of that course load, still write the grants, still go after, and sometimes have to, tailor it to get the money that's available. And then it comes with specific, and at Mellon, I've seen some of those contracts. I mean, it is very specific. You have to do this. You can only do this. You cannot do that. You must deliver this at this date. So this idea. So again, it's there's a little bit of wiggle room here and there depending on the details. And I haven't seen this one obviously, but anyway. So there are people trying to do good things, but there's no overtly, as far as I'm aware, there wouldn't be much overtly funded radical work being done. And there are, again, heavy limitations on what you can do when you get that kind of money. So that's why, when I had my little meeting with the provost and he was like, how much of your award are you giving to, because I was saying, you should match my award with a matching, a matching payout that goes to Black Studies. And he was like, well, how much are you giving to that? And I was like, none. I was like, this is mine. This is me. And he, it's with that kind of money, when you get those Mellon kind of grants and stuff like that, that's not an option. It gets funded through the university. They get their cut. And then you got a very specific measurables, deliverables that help the university, that help the grant writers, of course, and to a certain extent can help faculty and maybe even help people in some cases, But to the point of that question, I mean, it's very difficult, and I tend to think whatever we think we're doing that's good, we have to recognize that equal and more well-funded efforts against what we're doing are being done. So whatever I've written, particularly academically, whenever we write something we think is fire, we think is great, whatever, and it may be, those who we would consider our enemies can read it too. They can study it too. And they can make better, they're more well organized and funded to make better use of it than we are currently. So we have to be real with that. Anyway, so I don't know if I hope I answered that question a little bit. And I do want to also thank, first of all, ZZ Lion Dad. I saw that you had dropped a few dollars on my video the other day at the end, and I missed it live. So thank you for that. I don't know why you're saying I cut Diallo off. The exact opposite happened this morning. So I've been very good with that. Y'all tripping. But anyway. In and out of lane. And look at Diallo. I don't know. Look at his face. Yeah, I know. I said what I said. ZZ got it backwards, but that's all good. But anyway, thanks for the super chat. Diallo says, I see.
I tried to look into it, but I stopped because I got tired. I was looking at he was saying what's the background of the Mellon Foundation.
Oh, I don't know all the details on that. I mean, it's big money, deep. That's old money. That's
And I know they said they teaching Black folks at Morgan how to critically think, though. I know that. That's what they bankroll.
Again, Mellon's not interested in that, but faculty are. And again, we're not crew, we're not family or close friends, but I know Professor Simpson at least a little bit over the years, and I think that I would suspect that she's in that camp doing the best work that can be done in the circumstances. And again, I just want to say, for those of we were teaching 4 classes a semester, and I'm never going to stop saying that this is an enormous handicap when you're trying to be doing any of this work. So when Josh Myers produces a book like he produced out of Howard, when Professor Simpson gets, because whatever we even think about writing those grants is difficult. It's a lot of work. And you got to go through, a lot to get that money. So it's, to me, on some level, that's just impressive enough. And then I do think within the classroom, there are those of us trying to do things that, anyway, back again. Thank you, ZZ Lion Dad. So Mellon and Morgan is the ball and chain, just playing Dr. Ball. Okay. I mean, you paying for your right to get your jokes in, so I appreciate the support. I appreciate it. But grant writing is very difficult. Yeah, go ahead, Diallo.
Well, to speak to the question of since we're off the whole Black queer, and while the movement is going towards
come back to that
rainbow and away from RBG. Speaking on funding, I in my observations, this funding and grants don't actually corrupt. I think many of the people who receive the grants, they're already, if you're revolutionary, receiving a grant theoretically should not corrupt you. So I don't think funding is what corrupts people. I think funding gives people exposure and gives people opportunity and status to kind of show where they are. The status quo, everything from intelligence agencies to these major funding institutions and think tanks have this concept called blowback, where they do put resources into things in order to direct them, and it tends to blow up in their faces. It tends to blow back on them. So there are some radical elements that receive funding and receive resources from reactionary or status quo institutions, and they take those things and do other than what they were projected to do. And that's they have a term that's called blowback or unintended consequences of their funding. So no, I wouldn't just dismiss an individual or a group simply because they got funding, whether it's from Bill and Melinda Gates, which is kind of the new Mellon, and the Ford Foundation. Just about every single parasitic imperialist, including Cecil Rhodes, has some charitable organization or some charitable institution. That's just what rich folks do. It's a vanity thing, and it's also a way of laundering money, and it's also a way of allowing their legacy of exploitation and domination to resonate. So I would not dismiss individual or a group for getting a grant. But if you go into it, if you're not revolutionary going into it, a lot of times we think, oh, this thing has all these grand claims that it's going to do, and we don't get it. So no, it's not the funding that corrupts a revolutionary. It's once you're a revolutionary, wherever you get resources, it's really truly the Malcolm X by any means necessary. So it's not necessarily resources. I don't think resources corrupt.
Well, that's what.
Well, but also these are not resources for revolution. My bad. Go ahead, Geechee. Sorry about that.
I'm saying that's what Patrice was doing, though. She was getting the money, buying people houses, and being radical.
I don't want to talk about Black Lives Matter and money because y'all never answered my goddamn question.
What question?
Not y'all, but all y'all. Not y'all, but y'all. When this shit first jumped off, everybody said that it was George Soros and the white elites funding Black Lives Matter, and that they were being funded by the enemy. And then when they got money, everybody said they robbed the community. So did they get money from white folks, or did they rob us? Which one?
Both. Why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't it be both?
Because we ain't got money like that.
But part of what I
allow me to ask one question. Who do you know that's given any money to Black Lives Matter Foundation or organization? Formerly?
Well.
Raise your hand if you know one person that's given a dime to Black Lives Matter personally. Because I know Black people that gave money to the nation. I know Black people that give money to the Rainbow Coalition. I know Black people that give money to all these churches and all these pastors. I know where Black money goes in terms of activism, and they fighting for us. I see where the money goes. I get your right from the hood go to BLM.
I get your point, and I think you're right about the I think you're right. But when I hear people say they ripped off the community, I'm also hearing the immaterial theft of the ideas and the movement. So
yeah,
but here's another. I got another thing.
And the resources that could be going directly to the people.
Just if not for Black Lives Matter, every movement will be well funded. The Black struggle, the Black community was starved of resources before Black Lives Matter came.
Absolutely.
It was before Black Lives Matter came. And if we gonna do, I'm all for auditing and accounting. But how we got Black organizations and prominent Black individuals that been millionaires for decades. Before I was born, we got Black activists putting their mistresses up in luxury Trump Tower. Do I need to say the name? We got Black freedom fighter militants out here living in mansions.
Yeah, because I don't know who you talk about.
Old money.
That's what we do.
Do I need to name Jesse?
Yes.
Have we audited Jesse?
Definitely Jesse.
Have we audited
I used to drive by
and the Nation of
his
Islam?
house
Do you know
on
how
16th
much
Street.
money the Nation of Islam collected from the community to open Salam, the Salam Bakery and Salam Restaurant, a multi-million-dollar venture? How much money was collected at the Million Man Farce?
Wait a minute.
And the Million More Movement and the Million Family March? How much money directly out of Black pockets? Directly out of Black pockets. Now, I'm talking about, George Soros and all that. How much money in these various million or more movement, march, justice or else, and I don't hear no accountability. And here comes some sisters trying to get in on a hustle they've been left out of, robbing the community for our sake.
But listen, that's
I'm just saying, it just seems.
You said you didn't watch the video, but that's the argument that she
It seems like
she did say so. She's made this argument a number of. She made it.
It's a legitimate argument, and if we don't speak to it, we look like some damn fools.
She made the parallel to the Dave Chappelle point about activists dying broke. She made a parallel point about that.
That's a lie, though.
Well, that's irrelevant. I'm saying she made the point that your facts, Diallo, are irrelevant to her argument that her brother and the security that he was providing deserved all that money, and her mama deserved to be taken out of Section 8 housing, and that
was
all
heavy.
of that.
That was heavy.
Have we audited
45% of black people in America?
I know personally black people who have given money to Umar for their school, and we gave Umar $700,000, and he called us trifling because it wasn't $1 million. Well, and I saw him out parading. Listen,
from his celebrity
I'm all for auditing, but it seems insincere when we can look over literally decades of the community being robbed, and then all of a sudden black people want to start doing accounting when there's some sisters up there in the shiny suits.
I think it's the sisters. I think the sisters is.
And I've been calling this out back in the early 90s. I was talking about what happened to that March money. Where the March money at? Where the March money reside? And people was calling me a hater. People was calling me an agent. People was calling me. And now y'all want to know where the money reside. And so if we're going to go on a money reside campaign in a black movement auditing effort, it's kind of insincere to start with an organization or a movement that's been around less than 3, 4, 5 years. We got movements that have been collecting money from the hood for decades that we just gonna give a pass.
All right, so we're gonna have a segment on Earn Your Liberation of pocket watching with Diallo, and we're gonna follow the money and see what the money.
This ain't pocket, and It is. It just seems insincere to me. I'm all for keep that same energy. That's all I'm saying. Keep that same energy. I just
so this is part of my
invite to an event.
This is part of the point I was trying to make about the context and the plug and play. So part of what I think is the response that you're seeing is it's not just that it's women, it's that they are claiming to represent a movement. The others that you're comparing them to, who have been making money off the community all these years, are many of them are coming off of the traditional, more well-accepted celebrity, black business, that whole thing. So I think in terms of consciousness and acceptance, it's easier to accept and be less critical of someone who made their money through entertaining us and through the fantasy of creating business than it is to be critical of people who are asking of us to be more radical politically than we have ever been or are used to being, even if, relatively speaking, it doesn't satisfy some of us. So that's at least part of what I think is the response, that I do think it's easier for people to accept black wealth or the appearance of black wealth when it comes from some sort of business or entertainment piece.
But I didn't mention also business and entertainment. I talked about political and movement leaders. You're talking about them sisters represent a movement. I'm talking about movements. I'm talking about these organizations where the leaders have been siphoning money off the top for decades, for generations. And we have not audited or called that shit out. The Rainbow Push Coalition been around since before I was born. The goddamn NAACP collects bank. So to me.
Oh, I see what you're saying. My bad.
So I don't know. I hope black women take over every black organization, including the black church in the community. Because when black women are in charge, that's when we really want to be critical. That's what, and I think the level of criticism, the level of critique, the level of skepticism that is leveled against Black Lives Matter, I appreciate it, I support it, but it looks suspicious AF when all these black organizations that are around long before BLM don't get the same level of scrutiny. And what's the difference between them and them?
Well, I think you make a really good point, but one key difference that jumps out is that most of those organizations you're talking about had no real relationship to Black youth. There were no young Black people thinking about the NAACP or even the Nation of Islam for that matter. So when Black Lives Matter comes out with the hashtag, with the social media, with the youthfulness, with the T-shirts, with the energy, that's why even in Ferguson, when Jesse and Al and them and that whole crew showed up, they got booed. The response was, "We don't want you." So there was this lane into which what these women did could emerge, and with that would come new expectations, and with that, with new levels of attention. I mean, you can smile all you want, but nobody, none of the, I mean, Diallo, none of the people none of the Black youth, at least, I'm not talking about anybody else, but I would argue that, let me finish my point. None of the Black youth that are critical currently of Black Lives Matter were at all ever thinking about what had been happening to them vis-a-vis the NAACP or anybody else for however many years, because those organizations have no relevance to Black young people, which is why, again, when they showed up, when elements of them showed up in Ferguson and elsewhere, people were happy to join a Black Lives Matter effort and to do something else. Then later, when the post-George Floyd money comes in addition to, there were these other, it's just more scrutiny. And in addition to what I'm already saying is a very good point about what you're saying about them being women. But I also do think that there are other factors here. But I also think that I also think what they did is criticizable. So I'm a little bit not wanting to just let them continue to go outside of critique. Even as I see the point that you're making is a good one.
So you saying Umar wasn't you saying Umar wasn't critiqued from day one? Was he or not? Umar.
Who you asking me?
Yeah, where the money? They didn't ask Umar where the money the whole time?
But yes, there were people who were critiquing. And those people, myself, were literally called agents, were literally called mocked and demeaned and called agents. He got support he told us he was going to save our youth from the system and collected money. Now, this thing where you talking about the youth today, I'm talking about an ongoing multi-generational pattern here. I'm not talking about, okay, what's happening right now. What's happening
but you're comparing the critique now to the absence of a critique against that other.
There was a time, these organizations, you said the youth don't look. There was a time when we were the youth. And the rappers and the celebrities of that time, Farrakhan's a prophet that I think you ought to listen to. You mean Nation of Islam? I remember everybody in the hood walking around with X caps and a copy of Message to the Black Man in America was all over my college campus in my days. We got to acknowledge. And my thing is, in order for the critique to be valid, we got to acknowledge there's something, like you said, there's something different now than it was back then. It ain't just our ages.
But Farrakhan was
I didn't say it was just the ages, but my generation rebelled against when I was more active, the organizations I was building with were explicitly saying we don't want anything to do with the nation or the NAACP or that group. We were explicitly doing what you're saying. So
who were the hot growing organizations of that time? And you talking about, we don't want anything to do with them when he could call 1 million Black men to Washington, D.C. So we can't just talk about, the few of us. Yes,
but you're talking about. Well, you're not just talking about one group, though.
The community as a whole. It's just that whole shit was mad weird to me. And as someone who had been calling for audit and oversight and critique of Black organizations since the early 90s, someone who's been calling for that, to see it emerge under these circumstances, I guess you could say be careful for what you wish for, because you might get it. I don't think that and what I really believe is that Black Lives Matter, once people are calling out and following, it's come from a right-wing perspective, people following Candace Owens and watching her shitty documentary about the money and all that
part of what I'm saying. That part of what's being ignored here is the critique coming from the grassroots, from Black women, from Black radical organizers working within the Black Lives Matter root. Like, they are part of the
Yes.
loudest voices pushing the critique. So that's why I'm saying this is not as simple as I think you're leaving it. And there's a lot more going on here, and I don't want to give, not the least of which, again, it is a generational thing to a certain extent for the Black.
This shit been going on.
But no. Again, obviously, I'm not saying this. I'm not saying it is new that people are ripping off the community and the movement. I'm saying the critique that is being levied against Black Lives Matter is new and specific. It has, I think, a specific context that can't be judged against what my generation and your generation didn't do. This is, and the critique I'm focused on. I'm not talking about the Black bourgeoisie and the whites and all of them. I'm talking about the Black youth, particularly the Black radical youth, who are leading this critique as far as I'm aware. That's the critique I've been paying attention to. And they would have been critical of any group at this point that took the mantle of leadership that went to Black Lives Matter. But they don't have and they're not paying attention to Farrakhan. They're not paying attention to the NAACP. They're not paying attention to Al Sharpton. They're paying attention maybe to Tamika Mallory. They're paying attention maybe to whatever other offshoot, and they're certainly paying attention to all these various Black Lives Matter outlets in ways that are very different than they would have been focused on the NAACP. Also in a different time, with a different ability to magnify their response than when we were young, having a similar critique of those same old style entities.
This is not a generational divergence. This is an ongoing, consistent generational pattern. So there's no break. There's Malcolm X, in his message to the grassroots, talked about the money that the big six were getting, and he was calling them by name. And you could replace Abernathy with Tamika Mallory and all the, and you can replace
but a Black teenager isn't going to be able to do that because they don't know about Malcolm X's message to the grassroots. But that interruption was done on purpose because our guest is here, and we do need to stop and honor that fact. So I'll happily take the blame. And if ZZ wants to drop a few more dollars to talk about how I cut Diallo off, I'll happily, I did, because we got to move on. So let's take a quick break and get to our guests and come back here and talk about my tree-lined streets. So fall back, everybody, including you, Diallo. We talk about the real hardcore Columbia, Maryland.
I mix what I like.
My bad. I forgot where I was. My bad. I forgot where I was. We not there.
That's that Columbia.
That's that Columbia. I was on my Columbia stuff. Hold on. All right, Diedrich Muhammad joins us once again. Columbia, Maryland representative. Let's get that part straight. He's the chief of organizing policy and equity at the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, NCRC, who have published a new report that we are going to get into here for a few minutes this morning. Columbia at 55, creeping segregation and lack of affordable housing threatens a legacy of Black-white integration. So, Diedrich, again, welcome to the program, and let's get your initial thumbnail or whatever summary of what this report is saying, and then let's talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, I'm glad I can get you guys focused on, what's really important for Black radical politics, studying Columbia versus discussions about Malcolm X and Tamika Mallory. So
we don't need all that nonsense. It's the realness.
So Columbia, Maryland, for most people would have no idea what that is. I guess people watch the show. Jared's talked about it for a while, but a suburb in between Baltimore and DC, much closer to Baltimore. Created around 1967. And it was interesting in that it was one of the first planned communities, I think two in that time period, that wasn't designed to be racially segregated, meaning keep non-white people out. And so, it's been around 55 years. Interest, the Boondocks, the popular comic strip and television show, Aaron Magruder was based off of that. And I went to high school with him, and kind of a lot of the jokes about this attempt to have something that was designed to be more racially integrated meaning black and white at that time period. I think there were some interesting learnings. I think why this is interest of me, not just because I live here, but someone who does community economic development nationwide, is what effects can intentionality have in creating opportunity when you're in a larger society that is so dominated by race, class, capitalism, what have you, what can be done. And I do think Columbia showed some interesting things in an intentionality to build mixed housing, right? Making sure original Columbia, old Columbia, had apartments, townhomes, single family homes, all in the same area, had much public access, public lands, which made it very, people enjoyed that a lot. It made it a very successful suburb. But then as the success occurred, more people just moved to Columbia to be part of a successful to be part of a successful suburb. And you started having, particularly in the last couple of villages, much less mixed housing in terms of townhomes, single family homes, and apartments. And so now in the most recent village, River Hill, I think the median value for a home is $700,000, and they only have maybe 9% apartments versus the original spots like Wall Lake and Town Center that had like 50, 70%, no, 50, 40 something percent apartments. And so you can see kind of just over time, even with, and the way that Columbia could even be as successful as it was originally was because it had total control, right? Like the Rouse Corporation is a corporate town. Like they bought the land, no one knew what they were doing. There was no real democratic systems to oversee Columbia. Columbia is weird in that it's the second biggest city in Maryland, but it doesn't have a mayor or anything like that. It has more of an association that used to be run by a company, and now that's more run by kind of a housing association. But the strict control allowed them to go in a particular direction. But as that weakened over time, we kind of allowed general American segregation by income and class to continue. Just the one other point I'll note is one thing I didn't realize, becoming more clear to me, is that the original design of Columbia was to have kind of middle or higher middle income and high income. It was never designed to really have low income, right? And so in some ways, you actually might have more low income housing in Columbia now than you did when it started. It's just you have such ridiculously high income housing that overall median home values, median income in Columbia has gone up very high. So I think that's
even for Black people, which I thought was fascinating too in this report. But there's a lot of things. So first of all, I do need to apologize to you and remind my co-host that in about 30 minutes, I do have to step out for about 10 minutes or so for a virtual doctor's appointment. So I apologize, and I'll rejoin the conversation shortly. But one thing I did want to start off with is, before we get into anything else, is just the subtitle of the piece. Creeping segregation and a lack of affordable housing threatens a legacy of Black-white integration. And I did want to ask you, I thought you'd be a good person to ask of this, not only because you're a co-author of the report, but the assumption that Black-white integration is a good thing, as the title suggests. Could you say a word or two about what is it a good thing? Why is it automatically taken as a good thing that this notion of integration?
Yeah, and I would, personally, I'm much more for desegregation than necessarily any type of pushed integration. You will see that in reports I write in my professional job, it all doesn't reflect 100% my politics, obviously, right? Because who pays me to reflect my politics, right? So there is some changing of things in this. And I think that does go, I think it's real, I think the title really gets more toward the kind of mythology of Columbia. Columbia is this great place that's like multiracial and multi-class, and it's integrated. And that was like this positive spin. And now people are kind of like, oh, well, there's, when I was in school, it was like, oh, there's a Black table. Is that bad? You know what I mean? Ignoring the non-white tables, right? But, there's a Black table. And then now that, and one of the interesting things I found with Columbia was that I've been impressed that the Black population has been continue to grow. I would have thought that even in terms of percentages, that now it's almost 30% of Columbia. It started off at about 8 or 9%. So even with the increase in cost of housing and stuff like that, Columbia has been a place where the Black population has increased. And I've been just kind of shocked to find, maybe I haven't paid enough attention to the public schools, that no school in Columbia is even majority white anymore. And that's just a very big change from where I was. Now you're seeing kind of classic racial, socioeconomic segregation, and there's a real distinction. There's like 8 high schools, and there's 4 that's majority Black Latino, and there's 4 that's majority Asian and white, right? And all the economics that goes with that. So you see these divisions, and you're seeing understandings of like inner city Columbia, right, which is where Blacks are, and maybe growing Latino population. But yeah, so I think,
and that was the one thing I didn't. If I hope I didn't, maybe I missed it, but there was one thing, that was the one thing I didn't see in your report that has been reported elsewhere, that within Howard County schools, not specific to Columbia per se, but within Howard County generally, the segregation occurs at the level of AP or GT, whatever they are, AP classes. So everybody might go into the building, but the classrooms become wildly segregated, as Black students are almost never in these elevated courses. And that does create social distance and dislocation, even as everybody is physically walking into the same building. So it's kind of, to me, Columbia has always been kind of slick with what it claims it's going to be and how it's able to actually deal with the context of the world in which we live. So one point I just wanted to, you mentioned it, and I thought it was an interesting point that the study does account for, is that African Americans in Columbia have over twice the household income of African Americans nationally, which I automatically assumed was an extension of the gentrification that's happening as Black families are pushed out of DC and Baltimore. Those with relative means can stay in PG County or Montgomery County. Those with a little more means come farther out here to Columbia and end up on the soccer field, where I overhear them on the sidelines lamenting all the hood Negroes that are seemingly following them out to Columbia. So like this is wild class thing that anyway, so go ahead. I just said a lot, but go ahead.
No. I mean, but there always has been, right? Like I remember hearing, family friends, talking, we were all kind of, all Black situation, talking about, man, I used to remember, they're talking to other Black people about how they remember when they used to not see another Black person for a few days, and now they see one every day. And like, this was like in the 80s. And I'm like, and you're complaining about this to Black people, right? So there's always this kind of, interclass tension or contradiction or what have you. But I do want to note, median Black income is twice that of in Columbia of Blacks nationwide, but it's still 92,000, right? So I just want to be clear, it's not like people are necessarily balling out in Columbia, right?
Right. It's just relative,
that's two people making 45,000, right? So again, I think
that's deep.
I think this is the challenge. People don't understand how people really live throughout the country, right? Like the median household income in the U.S. for Blacks is 45,000. So like, most people
household income, not individual. That's household income.
That's household income. That's not individual, right? And so that's how the median of Black households are surviving. So yes, Columbia, and two, it's important to recognize Maryland is the highest income state in the country. And Howard County, which is where Columbia is located, is one of the wealthiest counties in the country, right? But yet still, there's this thing about we can't send our kids to Columbia public schools because they're too hood, right? Like, and hood just means just Black people, because like, it's not like there's shootings and all this type of stuff in the schools like that, I mean, there's a shooting every now and then, just like there's random shootings across the country, right? You know what I mean? But it's not like a regular problem of that type of violence. So, that's always a constant tension, is even if you have a local ideal and you have a lot of means, because Jim Rouse, the founder of Columbia, he was able to pull together, millions of dollars and really do what he wants in a way that very few people ever could. But you still have to deal with the dynamic of being in a much larger society and all those tensions coming in. So, and again,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just want to note, this report is 20 pages, right? So it just kind of touches a lot of these issues, but I just felt it was important because, like, people don't understand, across the country, people do look at developed communities and they point to Columbia, Maryland as one of the few examples of a successful planned community. So I think it does have some national repercussions of trying to understand what can even happen at the local level, and even with decent intentions and a lot of money, the challenges that occur.
So before I invite my colleagues to get in, I do want to ask one more thing specific to me selfishly, because your last comment was a little bit shocking to me because, again, as I often joke, I grew up in the hood of Columbia. All right. So when people talk about they didn't see Black people on my street, outside of my mother and maybe one other person in the building, there were no whites. So I didn't see white folks at all until I went to school, or maybe, to the store or to, but on that little block, it's literally just one block.
What part of
Long Reach, East Columbia, baby. Airy Brink Lane. You know what I'm saying? You heard? No, I'm just playing. But seriously, so I did want to ask, because I was trying to identify where Columbia found its, Long Reach situated itself. And even looking at some of what you were saying here about the schools and the demographics in the schools, I was trying to, like Long Reach High School didn't exist when I was a kid. So yes. the Howard High School was was considered like the hood high school at that time, or one of them, because it had a relatively higher, So anyway, but I guess what I'm just asking is if there's anything, if you could just say anything about the current breakdown of demographically of Columbia in terms of, you said it a little bit in terms of the high schools, but where are these pockets of Black and brown and so-called lower or relatively lower income folks?
Yeah, so like like you said, it's East Columbia, Wild Lake, Oakland Mills, Long Reach, and
is that Hammond, right? Yeah.
And Hammond are majority Black and Latino. What's interesting about Howard is I think people used to look down at Howard because it had a part of Columbia that really wasn't Columbia. It was more, particularly when we were younger, more white rural people, more lower income. They weren't part of Columbia. So people look down at that as more of like a kind of working class hick element with some Black people. But as that place got developed and rich white people moved in that area, now Howard is one of the whitest schools. It's still not majority white, but it's 47% white, right? So it's interesting how race through gentrification can triumph that classism, right? Because the white area then became the some of the like trailer homes became single family homes, and now that's much more of an elite area.
Geechee, Diallo, anybody want to jump in? You got anything you want? You're muted, Diallo, and I did not do it, by the way, so you have to unmute yourself. I didn't mute you. I don't want to get accused again. People putting super chats in about how I'm abusing Diallo over here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a lot, but just on some more specific targeted in terms of even with the segregation of schools, I've observed the phenomenon of Black students being segregated within desegregated spaces, and within schools. There's a term that some of the educators call, like some of the prominent schools that have, that are high rated, some of the best rated schools in the nation, public schools are here in Chicago. And many Black parents fight to get their children into those schools. And then they find that their children are segregated within those schools, not being able to get into the honors classes, and literally have a totally different floors where they put them on. And it's apartheid segregated within a desegregated schools. And I also see that within communities where you talk about high income and planned communities where the affluent Blacks who live there are extremely isolated within those communities. Can you kind of speak to that, even when the demographics, the numbers, and the physical proximity is what it's supposed to be? Often the culture and the relationships don't play out the way they're theoretically supposed to play out in desegregated, more equitable, integrated spaces.
Well, and I think and we didn't get into the depth of, like you said, like the segregation within the schools, right? Because and that was true when I was in school. Like people thought Oakland Mills was a tough school. They thought it was majority black, but maybe it was like 25% black, 30% black. But and would assume it's majority black, but not understanding. Like you go to classes. I remember they tried to move me to some GT class, and I was like, I'm the only black kid in this class. I was like, forget that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not doing that, right? Because and you can become isolated. Like they design you. I mean, it's just like, and it's America, right? Like that's what they try to do with even the token representation they're going to bring in. They'll put you in a predominantly all white space or elite space, and you're supposed to be separated from the other. So there is that issue. I think where Columbia was more successful, and to be fair, is I think in the 70s, there wasn't that type of radical phenomenon of like, having super GT and then honors and then regular. It was much more, you had smart kids in classes, you had slower kids in classes, which were pretty much all in the same class. And I think really it's America's reaction to class and race integration about how do we hold up, how do we make sure my kids aren't in the same class as these slow kids aren't being slowed down, right? And so they created, even within a school where you go to the same school with them, you can have an elite, a removed experience. And I do think that's a serious challenge and goes against, because I mean, in the original Columbia schools too, they had this really open thing where it was like, we're not having separate classrooms. Like they had like pods, like just open areas where kids, you could work at your own space, own pace, but be in one class. And so kids would move around from station to station. So I do think there was this kind of and helpful ideal version of what could be. But I think the reality is many people don't want their kids with working class kids. They don't want their kids who aren't getting paid tutors every night to help them out. They only want their kids with them, and I think that's maybe the biggest challenge to Columbia and to the country is we act like we want some type of equity and equal opportunity, but we don't. We want to be elite in our own circles and keep other people out, and we keep bumping into that.
And I'm sorry. But the thing is, and another thing I see with this concept of desegregation and integration, with the failings and the many problems that have been born out of this desegregation and integration movement, it seems like the integrationists and the desegregationists keep offering more intensified, expanded integration and desegregation whenever we come up against the failings of this effort.
Sorry, if you could explain that a little bit, I'm not following you.
It seems like you have a failed policy, and when the policy, when the fallout of the failed policies manifest, it's all that is offered to us is more of the failed policy, intensified failed policy, a reworking of a failed policy instead of abandoning the failed policies and offering something else.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the question is, what is the failed policy, particularly in the Columbia context? We could talk more broadly, and I'm trying to think of that guy's book. It was a white guy who wrote it, but he based it off of Stokely Carmichael saying around segregation. And moving away from Columbia, it was a good critique. It was based off of Stokely Carmichael's critique of the idea of how integration oftentimes mean deconstructing whatever Black spaces there were, and then allowing some Blacks to come into white spaces, and that, but never with this understanding of that, well, whites can also go into Black institutions, right? And he kind of deconstructed how during public school, during the 40s and 50s, Blacks were the most educated teachers in the country because Blacks with masters and PhDs really couldn't do anything else. Like all you could, there's a couple Black colleges you could teach at, and then you were a teacher. So you had a very elite teaching force. But with this idea of integration, it was like, okay, it wasn't we're going to send white kids into these Black schools. We're going to send Black kids into white schools, and we're not going to send their teachers because no one wants that Black teacher. So it like tore apart one of the stronger aspects of it. Still was a weak school system and that it wasn't funded and these types of things. So definitely, whether you have integration, let me say, and segregation can be used to maintain elite and white supremacy. And I think that's too oftentimes what we see. But I do think it is an interesting dynamic. And what does it mean? I mean, and we'll see, I guess. But something that's different than when I was a youth is as there's less and less white people. That's one thing I didn't know. It is interesting, too. that whites are the only group that are leaving Columbia over like the last 20 years. Like I think there's like a decline of, I don't want to exaggerate, I think I want to say 100,000, but they've moved from 2000 from being 64% of the population to I think 46% of the population in 2020. So that is interesting that it might even be too integrated for white people to come here.
Well, that's why they started building River Hill and all that stuff. I mean, that to me, when I say my point about Columbia being the microcosm of the bigger world, we see, and we could literally see the white flight because River Hill is right there. Like, you can see that they didn't go that far. They're right there.
Can y'all share some of that white flight? Because if y'all running out of white folks, I got some in my hood I'd love to offer up to y'all because this gentrification shit is going crazy in my hood. So if y'all short on white folks, I'd be glad to offer up the white folks up to Chicago. I tell them there's a black community seeking white folks that wants them there.
But I think that River Hill phenomenon, which is one of the newest villages in Columbia, the control that the Rouse Company had on Columbia didn't allow for River Hills to be developed for a long time.
Right.
I think that's an important piece that I haven't noted. The market will bring back and intensify racial class segregation. For whatever, it wasn't as successful as we wanted to be. For whatever success Columbia had, it's because they had control and didn't allow private developers to come in and just build houses wherever they wanted, a whole bunch of single family homes. It takes a really strong control of resources to, if you just have a free market, it'll just be elites over here and everybody else left to fend for themselves. So I do think
and by the way,
something to
just to add, sorry about that, but River Hill has already had its nigger and monkey incidents, and the few black students that are over there, they're getting it. So like it's.
Well, and also let's remember, and the students, like, this isn't like integration of Boston in the 70s, where you're taking poor kids from the hood of Boston, which is a real hood, because Columbia hoods aren't really hoods, but like from the real hood and put it. Come on now.
I'll just play.
What was your block called, Jared? Your block.
Airy Brink Lane, aka Airy Bronx, Airy Brooklyn. You know what I mean?
Say the real one again. Airy Brink.
Airy Brink Lane.
Yeah.
Dog, you lost already.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever. Exactly. You don't know nothing about these.
But my point is that it's not taking like youth from kind of isolated, super low income areas. Yeah. It's taking African Americans who are in the top 20%, and probably live in River Hill, top 10 or 5%, the most elite African Americans, and they're getting it for not being elite enough, right? And like so.
You're still black.
It's crazy how deep it is.
It's still black though. That's the thing. I mean, and if you got it, there is no income that will overcome that, and that's why that whole River Hill thing. I mean, it's such, to me, on some level, I think it's beautiful that I can drive down there whenever I want, and I can see that white flight. And I can see, and the now for those of us that have the Columbia gym membership, because like people, like you get a membership, a Columbia Association membership, and you get access to all the facilities. When I was swimming, the River Hill gym is the only heated pool in the whole joint. So I used to make sure I was in that thing 5 o'clock every morning, first one in the pool, because I see what they were doing. I saw what they were doing. Me, and you know who I would see there in the morning? For those who know this area of sports, David Dupree, the former basketball player and announcer. And, so he was out there still rocking his little afro. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's good for your back. Anyway, my bad. So, but you see it.
With a swimming pool and gym membership. You're the first hood with a swimming membership.
But
like I said, it's a microcosm. Obviously, it's not the hood, the real, but relatively speaking, but yeah, you get the gym membership. That's right.
No, but also too, like the hood is just where black people live, right? It's like everywhere, right? It's like, the cities, Baltimore, this great city, let's move there, get a job. That's where people go. And then once we get there in sufficient numbers, White people moved
Right,
out,
right.
resources moved out, and then it's the hood. So it's not weird that Columbia would turn into the hood. It's not weird that, I don't know when Baltimore's doing this, but you're seeing more and more whites moving into what was inner cities. And you're seeing more and more of our poverty being pushed out into the suburbs. So we didn't talk about that in this paper, but that is something to note that when Columbia was created, so this idea that Columbia was a place to get away from poverty, from kind of the social issues or what have you. But now the suburbs are really becoming the place where you're even having much more of low income. And Prince George's County is even a better example of that. That was like the high income Black area, but by it being Black, it allowed other Blacks to move in, and now it has a lot more challenges around like low income. And also just one last thing about but again, I don't know if I buy into your income can't buy you into whiteness. Your income and wealth, I might. It might. You know what I mean?
Even Henry Louis Gates had the police called on his funky self.
Uber got kicked out of the store. Uber got kicked out.
But that led to beer with the president.
Exactly.
It's not the same. Last time the police was in my face, last time I was in handcuffs, I didn't get no beer with the goddamn president. So,
but I'm just saying, I'm
not
saying it's not the same across the board.
He's
I'm just
like
saying
us.
in that moment though, they was like, nah.
Not like the racial inequality in that space is that an elite Black professor is equal to a working class white cop. Right? Like that's crazy. That's the race balance, right? That a working class white cop is equal to this Black professor, and they both get
not just the most elite Black professor, maybe ever.
You're right. Corporate connected, all that stuff. You're 100% right. But
anyway,
but I
I'm
do
just
think,
saying,
and that is even when we talk about the high income in Columbia, and it's 96,000, which isn't balling. That still has much less wealth than whites who would be at 96,000, or whites who I think are more around 150, 160 median income. So yeah. Anyway, just pointing that out.
Anybody got something they want to bring up? Because there was a number of other things that I could there's plenty of things here that I thought were fascinating, including one point was that the reminder that we got Fort Meade and the NSA when you were developing the context of Columbia. We got Fort Meade, which is high, not just the Army, but does a lot of military intelligence. We got the NSA around here. The whole corridor. But there was one other piece. What was the one other thing that I wanted to raise for sure? And I'm just going through my notes here real quick.
Well, just
go ahead. Yeah.
I just put one thing that also does make Columbia successful, quote unquote, is it was a smart location, right? It was in between two major city areas, and DC being this place of jobs all related to the federal government, allowed for the to be centered in a place of a growing economy, right? And that is something that I think is challenging for others to try to replicate. Like, well, what does it mean to try to grow a community in a city that is located in a down economy, Detroit, where the whole state is not doing well? Like what are the and I think one thing is the founder Rouse was very clear that his first goal was to make a profit, and I think this highlights the limitations of for-profit development. Like at best, I think you can do something like Columbia, where Columbia always, the median income was higher than the national income. And it was always a place for, upper middle class and high income people. And maybe there we could be racially integrated. But I haven't seen the society that's really bringing together, low income, middle income, and high income, and is designed to do so. And you will only do that with really government subsidized low income housing, because there is no real private market that serves low income people.
So because I got to jump off here, I'm gonna do something really trifling, and I want to raise this issue I wanted to raise, and then I'm gonna have to listen to it while I'm in this virtual doctor's appointment. Because this issue of integration and segregation, I think is fascinating, and there's a little bit of nuance here that I thought that you all pull out that was really interesting. So as you say here, while the Black population of Columbia is less evenly distributed relative to the white population and isolation has increased, the exposure of Black and white people to each other has deteriorated more drastically than the other two integration metrics. Exposure is a measure of the level of potential contact between minorities and the majority group in the places where they live. In the case of Colombia, there have been diminishing levels of exposure for Black and white residents, indicating that the groups are less likely to interact with each other than they were 4 decades ago. This intensifying pattern of segregation was identified for Howard County as a whole and for Columbia in particular over 20 years ago. A 2011 analysis of impediments to fair housing choice cites village design as a key factor in creeping economic and racial segregation of Columbia. Older villages adhere to Rouse's principles of economic and racial integration. Consequently, Harper's Choice, Owen Brown, Wild Lake, Oakland Mills, and Long Reach were developed with greater concentrations of affordable housing. River Hill was not developed until the 1990s and contains few multifamily units and virtually no affordable housing. So one, this multifamily unit phrase as opposed to apartments, I always think is fascinating. But this point specifically about integration is, I was trying to wrap my mind around it, and I admit I struggle a little bit conceptually. But you're talking about Black people being more dispersed throughout Columbia. And even while this is happening, interaction with whites still is decreasing.
And part of that's natural, right? Like if you're only 8% of the population and you're not all concentrated in one area, you're going to be bumping into white people all the time, right? Like because original Columbia was set up to kind of have low income, median, well, not even so much low income, but apartments, townhomes, single family homes all throughout. So if Blacks are 8%, we're all spread out, we're bumping into everybody. As the Black population grows, and as it's more clear that the older villages are the more affordable villages, that's more and more where Blacks are concentrated. I'm not as focused about, hey, Blacks need to bump into white people a whole bunch to have a positive society. I think kind of the most important aspect strategically around integration is that when you put higher income, middle income, and lower income people together in the same schools, those schools are more politically protected. When it's just considered a low income school, it's not politically protected because the high income people run things. I think like that's the main reason to try to have a more integrated society. And I think the strongest part of Columbia was that there was some buy-in for a while into the public schools, the Columbia Association gym that everybody could go to, or most people would go to, the the bike paths that everybody could use. Having public land that everybody buys into provides more opportunity than now as we see more and more private swimming facilities, private gyms. And so who cares about those for the public? Because the elite now have their own spot to go. So I think that's strategically where integration can be helpful.
Right. So I was joking with Jared about Calvin Ball being his cousin, Howard County executive. But how has the people in office or even Calvin engage this work, this research, any kind of traction with anybody in any of the offices with this work so far?
Well, it just came out a couple of days ago. There is a lot of, as everywhere, there's politics within Columbia. There is those who feel that, and I think there's a lot of truth to this, how much local politics is run by developers and by developer money. And that is interesting, like how dominant a force that is. And I do think this report can bump into some of that politics because what Columbia has been pried open more and more for private developers, which then allow for just greater segregation, kind of greater, even more elite than Columbia was before. So I do think this will play out. There's also the thing called the Columbia Association, which is supposed to be running Columbia. And there's been a lot of politics there about, they use the words diversity a lot because it's all white and it's mostly all old people, but white people are young at other white people about not being diverse, but it's still all white, right? And so, but I think a really key issue is how much focus and how much even is there buying in Columbia to having this idea of we're going to have a multi-class, multi-race thing. Because I think nowadays people might think of multi-race as meaning, well, look, I have someone from India who lives over here. I have someone from somewhere else over there, and that's all I care about, multiracial integration. When in the 60s, there was an idea that there was a class component to integration, that you had to do economic change for integration. And I think that is not part of the consciousness of many people in the suburb.
And I know this is probably off topic. Any hopes or thoughts about Wes Moore getting in office? Any positive vibes?
Yeah, no, it is interesting, and I think that's part of Maryland, right? About how Maryland has a much larger Black population than many people realize, and Columbia is part of that. And it's interesting to see how you first had Ben Jealous running 4 years ago, I believe, as the outside nonprofit Black guy who foundations like, and could he be the first Black governor, even though he had no experience in local politics in Maryland, though while running the NAACP, he did do a lot of advocacy things. And I think actually he was rejected by the Democratic establishment, right? Like they totally, because he endorsed Bernie, right? It wasn't like a super Black radical thing, but he was much more the Bernie wing of the party. They were like, this guy's not listening to us. He's not part of the machine. And so when he ran, he didn't get much support. Wes Moore kind of followed up, and I know they're friendly with each other, as I'm not going to be outside the Democratic establishment. I'm just an outside. I'm more like an Obama guy. I'm someone who people don't know is part of the Democratic establishment, but I can come in and represent you all well, right? So I do think probably Wes Moore will be better than Hogan, but I don't know how much that's saying, right? I mean, people loved Hogan, but Hogan was horrible to Baltimore and to doing things that might really redistribute resources, particularly to lower income Black communities. I think Wes Moore will be a bit better than that, but he doesn't have a strong grassroots base to really change politics in Maryland, at least from what I can tell.
So down to a simplification or a more rooted conclusions. Is segregation a symptom, or is it a problem unto itself?
I mean, I would say, to me, the problem is white supremacy and segregation. White supremacy segregation is a symptom of that. The idea that just some people might buy into a liberal notion that segregation, and it gets what you mean by segregation. Like, I don't consider a group of people living in one area because they want to segregation. Like Native Americans live in a particular area. I think segregation is when you have political and economic structures that only allow some groups in privileged positions and keep others in disenfranchised positions. That, to me, that idea of segregation, yes, I'm against. We should deconstruct, but I don't just kind of have this like, oh, it's about making sure you have enough friends of different races or cultures or things. Like, that's not really where I come from looking at segregation.
So in concluding that, so I actually agree that it's more about equitable distribution of resources.
Yes.
And just distribution of power and influence within institutions that control people's lives. So with that, it's not really about proximity to white people. I really appreciate you stating that, because I think more of our community needs to more so grasp that, because I think too many of our people think proximity to white people is power. Proximity to white people is evidence of Black advancement or Black elevation.
Yeah, no, and I think throughout, you know what I mean. If people study the history, a lot of the efforts around integration was more to get access to resources than it was just to sit, just to be around white people. I mean, there are very few serious Black activists who I think their main thing was, including Martin Luther King and people who represented integration. They were much more about providing greater resources than this idea. And I always find that interesting because Martin Luther King was very clearly part of a Black organization and Black institutions, right? He wasn't just trying to always make sure, well, if the country's 70% white, so my organization will be 70% white. That wasn't the focus.
But that was what made him popular. If you look at Dr. Amos Wilson's critique and at Claude Anderson's critique, that the reason why Dr. King resonated with and became so prominent in the imaginations of Black people was not so much in being remembered for his labor struggles and his economic cause for economic justice, but that promise that little Black boys and little Black girls can walk in hand with little white girls and little white boys. That was a misinterpretation that too many individuals in our community have run with.
Yes, I mean, it's because this is always a challenge, right? When you have to sell your message to a white elite who you're actually in many ways in opposition to, and when your people, when your Black people are getting most of their news and understanding what's good through the white elites, right? So what resonates with white elites is what they put on the news, what they sell as who you are, and which the masses of people oftentimes buy into. I would say early Martin Luther King, very early Montgomery bus boycott, I think it was much more people respected. He was standing up to a racist system because they saw him, they saw what he was dealing with. And once you start getting into national media and these types of things, it's very hard to get your, let's say, a critical voice of white supremacy, even white supremacy and liberalism, through a white supremacist liberal media outlet, right? Like, I think that's the challenge that we deal with. And, and you're right, and many people fallen victim to the kind of white liberal whitewashing of Dr. King that's been happening for the last 60 years. And happened while he was alive, right? And happened while he was alive. And it's even happened with Malcolm X. Like, I always remember, what was it, 93 or something like that, when Bill Clinton was jogging around the White House with an X hat? Like a Malcolm X hat. And I was like, in 92, 93, Malcolm was still considered radical in a lot of schools. I remember in Columbia, there was a deal at one of the schools that the Black kids would stop wearing Malcolm X shirts and the white kids would stop wearing Confederate flags. And I was like, y'all accepted that as a deal? But there was still this radicalness of Malcolm X. But again, Bill Clinton, and many others will take Malcolm X and say, well, he was an integrationist at the end. And, and that's why we should all love Malcolm, because he grew up to believe that all people, regardless of skin color, they'll always take that liberal frame and put that on our leaders whenever they're ready to accept them and recognize them.
All right.
You have all right. So I'll keep. So in you had stated that you are advocating for Columbia's leaders to return or reinstitute the founding principles, if I read that correctly.
Well, I'm trying to subtly push. They need to do more than that, right? Like that one, they've moved away from the founding principles, but even the founding principles weren't focused on really bringing in and having a space for low-income people, right? Even early.
Right. That's why I thought it was kind of curious that you were saying that they need to return to.
Well, yeah, and so I think that what's happened is there was that weakness, and I'm trying to note that in the original Columbia, and then it got worse, right? And now we're even a much worse path where we don't even want like somewhat middle and middle high income people. We want houses that are $700,000 in value as the median in our newest village. Like, I'm trying to highlight how distant we are even from that Rouse vision, and how even that Rouse vision had weaknesses, and that we would really need to, do a lot to change that. Now, between us, I don't believe there is a strong will in Columbia, Maryland. So many people who have moved here didn't even move here for the Rouse vision. They moved here to be part of an elite suburb. And so that's what they want. So I don't know politically where the power would come from to actually go for more radical vision of what would community economic development be that really doesn't try to, that really tries to include median income of Americans, right? Of white Americans, 70,000, Black Americans, 40,000, but also includes low income and has a functioning society, and I think that's a big problem with the country, is I don't think there is actually a will for that. And Dr. King always talked about that, right? We have the resources to address these problems. We don't have the will. And I still think that is the challenge, even in liberal Columbia.
Yeah, that actually was one of my questions. I took it away though, but it was definitely that idea of I guess still speaking to class in your work. And I wonder if there's ever a time. Earlier we was talking about anarchism, and we talk about communism and socialism, but I wonder if there's ever a time where in your work or other economists' work they kind of advocate for maybe that radical push of no class, or not to kind of even acknowledge a lower class versus a middle class.
Well, I
Like,
think, I think part of the challenge, particularly in this field of community economic development, is that you're focused on what you're trying to develop in this market dominated space, right? So the idea that you're going to create a no class community in a system and with developers that are, all make their money off kind of class differences is very challenging. One thing I bring up, there was a planned community called Soul City they were trying to develop in North Carolina. And they actually talked to Jim Rouse, the founder of Columbia, and we're trying to use some of these ideas. But I think there you see a difference. There you saw a black activist, and you can critique, there's plenty of critiques for black
black,
activists doing Soul City,
yeah.
but the power and resources they could garner versus what someone like Jim Rouse can, in that Soul City was never developed, right? It was never created. It was, it never got far beyond kind of the sketches. While
It's a
Columbia,
prison.
what'd you say?
It's a prison now.
Oh, that area. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Columbia's 55 years later is considered one of the top cities in the country, one of the most safe cities in the country, or what have you. So even when you have kind of black liberal reformists trying to have something for black people, I think the economics and politics of it hasn't allowed one type of successful community economic development space that Columbia has, that Columbia is. Yeah.
So Jarek, we were just trying to figure out how to get Bootsy to move down to Columbia, Maryland, and start our own economy.
Our own economy. You introduced DJ.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
I'm gonna connect Bootsy and Diedrich and see if we can do that.
But hey, but I will say one positive thing. I think I do think about Columbia, and a takeaway is that there was a lot of infrastructure built, and so it did allow for low income people to utilize these in ways. Like when my family became very poor, we still had access. Like, yeah, you might be segregated somewhat in the classes, but still the schools were better than a lot of other schools, right? Like at all levels. You still had access to like this walking park. I mean, this walking the path system and things like that. Like there are some positive, and I think that is why it's so important to have a strong public sphere, particularly in our limited kind of socioeconomic situation, that one of the things we can do is fight for the strongest public sphere spaces that really are open to all. And this is a whole separate thing that's not in the report, but always, even in the public spaces, it was always real clear to me that when they have artistic events and these types of things, they weren't having things that would bring in a lot of African Americans or excite, bring in blacks from Baltimore. It's always kind of, very white, like the wine festival. That's actually started to become black over time.
No, we get every year, because Meriwether Post Pavilion is right in the heart of Columbia, the main venue for art and music performance. Every year we get the jazz festival at the beginning of the summer, and then we get the August end of the summer Soul Summer Fest, or whatever they call it, where all the black artists come out, and everything in between and everything else is pretty much white mainstream stuff.
Which was a pretty big change, though. Which was a pretty big change from when we were youth. Like you didn't even get that. Like you weren't having jazz events. It's only become understanding now that we can, have jazz for black people if it's for, really bougie 50 and older. You know what I mean? Like, type. So
yeah, and they'll bring and they always have a go-go band as part of that Soul Summer Fest. So that's always a good thing too. Anyway, appreciate you all. Let me jump out real quick and had this virtual doctor's appointment, which is, good thing I got some healthcare. Shout out to healthcare.
Pears.
Anyway,
shout out to pears.
So since both of y'all are Howard County products, what, in the spirit of Black History Month, what would be the Black history of Howard County that you will share, or that you would encourage people to learn about.
Oh, Harriet Tubman Lane is right down the street. Harriet Tubman's, Underground Railroad came through here. They got and there's a DJ. I don't even know anything about this. There's a Freedom School around the corner over here. Well, not over here, but on not far from Harriet Tubman Lane.
Well, yeah, like there is this Black history pre-Columbia creation. I do find it fascinating, that you have one of, the nation's most important Black radicals that's part of a Black media collective out in Columbia, Dr. Jared Ball. I'm always amazed at that Columbia produced.
Me and Diedrich, you and Aaron Magruder paving the way. I did think that was funny. I didn't know you two were actually classmates. You dropped that in that
I used to call him Farrakhan. We were Black Studies together. I used to call him because he's light skinned, he has glasses, and I was known. My Black radical, the white mom, was known as the Black radical of the school, right? And so people would talk to me about things and what have you. So yeah, me and Aaron did go back. But what's interesting is where I live right now. I didn't even know this growing up. This was a slave plantation. Like the slave master's house is right up there. Oakland Mills High School, I didn't know this when I went there. That was the mill for the slave plantation. That is where I live now, in the slave master's house up here. And I find it crazy how Black people are having their weddings up in the slave master's house all the time, thinking this is a place to do the electric slide. I'm like, what are we doing?
Hey, well, Blandair Park, they built that new athletic complex, and they have the little signpost in the middle, talk about Blandair Park, and it's that whole area was included some housing for enslaved Africans and stuff like that. So there is. I mean, this is Maryland. It's the United States. It's Maryland. So there's bound to be a whole bunch of horrific nightmare. Howard County is named after the British Lord Howard or whatever, another slave owner. What else? There was more, but so yeah, anyway, anyway, it's not the same Howard as Howard University, by the way. It's the British slave owner as opposed to the defender of Southern education.
I thought y'all was gonna say one of y'all was Jay-Z's connect in Maryland. He came to handle some work.
For a few years. See, again, people always glorify one end of that trade. For a few years, I would have been one of his customers in this area, or one of his employees. Customers.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about. I'm just catching up. Okay, I didn't know Jason came down here.
Some of us was over there hanging out behind the Wawa lady. that late night Wawa hangout. Anyway,
all right. Well, I appreciate you guys letting me come talk about.
No, DJ, anytime, man. Appreciate you, man. No, thanks for doing this work, man, and for letting us know about it, and continued good work, and happy Black History Month. Congratulations. Now, thanks again, DJ. Appreciate you, man.
Right, thanks,
take it easy. So, yeah. Anything you all want to do before we wrap up here today, this fine morning? I know I missed some of that conversation, but and no, it was not Obamacare. Somebody said it was Obamacare. No, my health care is strictly is Morgan State and VA, baby. War veteran. I'm over insured. That's the beauty. So when my mother lost her insurance, I found out I was like, well, can't I shave off some of my extra insurance? And they were like, nah. It doesn't work like that. So anyway, fellas, anything before we wrap up? Anything you want to let us know about?
Well, I'm updating my website, DialloKenyatta.com. You can find my archives, essays, and all that stuff on Diallo Kenyatta. It's being updated. So
word up.
Slowly, painfully, but
all right. Word up. Geechee, anything for you?
Tomorrow we supposed to have a broadcast. I keep forgetting I think it's whatever the country name, the Swaziland now. I keep forgetting the new name. But we have a broadcast. I don't know. You have to Google it.
Wait, I'm about to do that now. I'm doing it now.
But, we have a conversation.
Eswatini.
Yeah, Eswatini. That's right.
Right? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, yeah. We're having a conversation about a woman came with an audience there. So one of the brothers from our think tank, and then a couple sisters. We probably.
What time is that? What time is that?
I think it's at 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock, and I don't know. I know it's 12 o'clock somebody time. I'll text it to you.
Oh, yeah, text it to me.
My time be jacked up. But yeah, then I'm gonna try to go find Kalonji, see if we can ride in the Black History police car while I'm in Atlanta. So,
yo, hold up! Wait a minute!
No, it's not right. In Atlanta. It's not in Atlanta though.
Where is that thing? I got
Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think they've put it in the garage though. I think as a result, so you missed your chance.
Damn.
Oh no way!
Columbus, Ohio.
That's close to Diallo.
I think it's appropriate. I don't think y'all got any right to be mad.
Hey, what? What? Oh, TR. Oh, that's the shade room. I was about to say, what is that?
Oh, that's the Instagram promo overlay.
I don't think y'all got any right to be mad about that.
Hey man, look at them.
Why? Because we did it to ourselves. Because we gave over the revolution.
That's Miami.
That's Miami. I was talking about the one in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, there's multiple versions of these.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was Miami, Ohio, where the university at. But okay.
I mean, do y'all want desegregation or not?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Diallo's funny, man. Diallo's funny, man.
We can't sit here for an hour complaining about segregation. Everybody wants desegregation, loves desegregation until some desegregation shit happens.
Well, maybe we should do what the Hasidic Jews did up there at the police station one day.
What's that?
What they do?
They attacked. You remember they burned down that police station back in the days? I think a police kills one of the. I think it's from New Jersey. A police killed one of the Jewish members, and they tore down the police station.
Oh, I thought you were talking about how they got their own police force.
Oh, in Baltimore they do. They got the Shamrock.
And in Crown Heights in Brooklyn, and they have their own ambulance.
Well, maybe they did that as a result because they burned down the police station one time. But one of theirs got
killed. That's because we haven't done enough of checking in with our
Coach's top thought leader.
So we
I can't get over that Elijah Muhammad crown.
Hey man, leave that man alone. And he in Chicago, go holler at him, man. See if you can get one too. And
he's here in Chicago. I'm still waiting on T.O. to call me back to
go. Yeah, what happened with that? Yeah.
I contacted him. He said I contacted him. He said send me your number. So I sent him my number, my personal phone number, and I sent him my personal email.
He might got to check in, and he might have ran your name past some dudes, and they was like, "Nah."
To be honest, I walk the streets every day. I live on the south side. It's just y'all want to make a spectacle of it. I'm gonna go ahead and do it.
All right, well, fellas, I appreciate you. I will be awaiting your text to figure out which 12 o'clock I need to pop up on so I can see this thing tomorrow. And
Happy White History Month. I observe White History Month. I give white folks the coldest, shortest month, and then I do Black History March to January. I flip it on y'all and reverse it.
That's reverse racism, but okay.
I flip it and reverse it. Now, who you think is more misinformed about their history, white folks or black folks?
Both.
No, I said who's more? Oh, equal. Oh, equality.
It's pretty. I mean, it's
you want to desegregate ignorance.
Diversity and inclusion.
I mean, black people are definitely not more ignorant. So it has to at least be 50-50.
Bless their white hearts. So they need it. So I want to share some white folks' history with white folks. You know, some laser focus.
That's what we're here for, Black Power Media.
For liberation. Hey, listen.
White folks straight on their history.
Huh? No, I'm not doing that here. You notice I didn't mention
Diallo's new show. Getting white folks straight on their history. Look, stop playing around. We all know Carter G. Woodson picked February because it's the birth month of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. So stop with this shortest month of the year nonsense.
Listen, but I think we ignore why he found it. Why did he find Black History Month? We focus on what he did, but not why he did. I think
it was Negro History Week, first of all.
Negro History Week, Black History Month, and it was supposed to, we didn't understand the assignment. That's all I say. We didn't really understand the assignment. And it's been turned into a spectacle. And that's why we got these goddamn police cars. That's why every time I got to go to Target, I got to get hit in the face. So I'm just going to get some method, multi-purpose cleaner. And I got to get smacked in the face by Target. All this Black History shit. I can't, I can't play like that.
Grinch, man.
Y'all have it. Y'all take it.
Well, happy Black History Month for the people who celebrate Black History.
That's everybody. Everybody mad at me, man.
Go ahead, read the last
understood the assignment. I don't think, how Black History Month 100 years old and we still powerless against white people deleting us from the curriculum.
Well,
we didn't understand the assignment. We didn't understand the purpose of Black History Month, and I'm sick of, just going through all this rigmarole with Juneteenth, all this black cosmetic stuff. But that's me. Y'all enjoy it. Like you people, you don't let me bring you down like Bobby did Whitney. I don't want to bring black folks down, but
I think the white quarterback is an N-word he gonna go sign with Morgan State and he gonna be in Jarrett.
Right? Wasn't that crazy? At HBCUing, they gonna reform and healing white.
So did they really? So they really gave him the invitation. He really
repealed it when it went public. They withdrew they withdrew the scholarship and invitation when it went.
So why aren't you giving them credit for that? Stop hating on HBCU.
They own
credit for what? For bowing to public pressure.
They corrected course.
But they still got that same spirit. They got that magical Negro spirit trying to heal broken white boys.
They needed a quarterback. He was 4-star.
Speaking of that, I watched the first episode of Apple's new.
Find some place to chase balls so brothers at least get an opportunity to stomp his head out. So I hope that racist quarterback does find somewhere to go chase balls.
That's where you're wrong. That's where you're wrong because you don't know Baby D. Who
Baby D?
It's a Friday line. You too old for it. But listen, he's gonna chase the throw ball.
Ooh, Diallo. Ooh, yeah, you might need to stop running that joke, homeboy.
What happened?
What?
Casual reference to domestic violence.
See?
What's the casual reference?
Your reference to Bobby taking down Whitney.
See, man,
no. Let me go back. That comes from a common line. And he was speaking to the fact that Whitney was considered a global superstar. And then when she got with Bobby, people back in the 90s said that she was no longer the queen of R&B. And also Whitney was under a lot of criticisms for being too white back then and that she wasn't connected. So when you bring Bobby, that's not a reference to domestic violence. That was before even any of that stuff came out. But so it was more so her losing her diva, superstar, pop star status and coming down to the Chitlin circuit, more or less. But okay.
The king of R&B, Rocks and Blunts.
Who?
Rocks and Blunts. That's what Jamie Foxx said. Bobby Brown was the king of R&B, but Rocks and Blunts.
Oh, that's deep. Well,
he's getting the help he needs, I think.
Oh yeah, Clive. Clive's still alive?
I don't know. I didn't get the word.
He's still alive.
Yeah.
Making talented Negroes' dreams come true.
Oh, Mama's Biscuits, y'all could have made it.
All right. Well, on that note, fellas, I got to run. If you all can, you can continue the conversation if you like. But
I gotta go too. I'm heading out.
You got to walk these South Side streets, and I'm about to get out in these tree-lined streets. Now that you all know what the real deal is with Columbia, put some respect on my experience and my name.
Let me see y'all gang sign. Columbia.
I'm about to go reread the report. I'm still a bit confused.
He wanted.
Def Rocker, you got to make sure you're subscribed and the bell notifications are on. I already did the first video on the first episode and explained we're going to be doing this every week. So yes, we already started looking at that monstrosity. So
it's your own fault. I told you don't pay no attention to Chuck D if he ain't on the stage. Ignore what, like you said, ignore.
It's going to be good for the classwork. It's going to be good for the semester's coursework.
Same thing.
But you are right. I think you're right on that. I think you're right on that.
Don't pay no attention.
I'm afraid. I think you're right about that. I think that's where we. I think. Yep. So
you're gonna have your heart broken every time.
It's always a pleasure to join you all.
It's Blackfish Fridays.
Right here, Black Power Media. Catch you all next time as we review all of the leading.
The Coach's top thought leader.
And we drop.
Now listen, that's called my boy.
And we, rail again.
They want to have black businesses and not just go to the white businesses. And they should have.
Even that. Wow. Oh, I didn't know Nixon wanted us to earn.
He's
the
right.
Coach's top thought leader.
They right on the same page.
You're out here channeling Nixon. Nixon is officially an ancestor.
Oh yeah, no, Nixon, because you got to be reminded.
Entrepreneurialist Negroes. They need to pour now y'all gonna have to start pouring libations to Nixon the next time.
That's their guiding light.
When I go to
yes,
I'm gonna call Nixon.
They want to have black businesses and not just go to the white businesses, and they should have.
And they should.
Look, Nixon.
Come on, Diallo. You better catch up to Nixon.
Is that why
Did you call bank? I call game.
Shit is wild. Business.
Oh man, fellas, it's always a pleasure. Next week, same time, same spot, all that good stuff. Catch Diallo's shows in the interim. Geechee as well will be on hand tomorrow at 12 o'clock somewhere. That's one of these 12 o'clocks.
Yeah, send me the link too, because
all the links are in the show description, including the link to the report we discussed today as well. And as always, like Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace only if you're willing to fight for it, not to Hop and Bob. Hop and Bob, we don't get no pieces. So we only Fred, And so anyway, catch you all next time. Thanks again right here on Earn Your Liberation. Peace, everybody. Thanks again for joining us.